Good afternoon. It's Monday, the 25th of April 2016, just after 1 o'clock. Welcome to UK Column News. I'm your host, Brian Gerrish. With me in the studio, Mike Robinson. Well, the weather. We have a report that it's drizzling in Holland and a second weather report that the weather is weird in Norfolk. It's cold and grey in Plymouth, but we had a glorious weekend, summer virtually Saturday and Sunday, so I think we'll leave it at that.
Indeed. Well, we're going to start off with British Home Stores now, BHS. It's filed for administration, 11,000 jobs at risk. But it was really one little snippet of information that the BBC noted here, which was that when this organisation had sold, it's understood that any buyer would only buy if it did not have to take on the £571 million pension deficit.
Oh. So
basically what has happened here is that at some point in BHS's recent history, the board has stolen £571 million from the people that have worked for it for the last few decades, and they've used it for other purposes, and they don't intend to give it back. So this, I think, I do wonder whether this is the reason for the sale. This half a billion pounds pension deficit.
Well, a bit tricky to magic £500 million, isn't it, Mike? That's a lot of money.
No, but it's no problem stealing it in the first place.
No problem stealing it. And we've just learnt that the Dutch equivalent, effectively, of BHS, which is Vay and Day, has also gone bust. So just a bit of a coincidence there.
Yes. And in the meantime, of course, it also goes for the banks. We've been talking about it for a long time. The banks are insolvent. This is an interesting little development because Goldman Sachs has traditionally been closed to the likes of you and I, Brian. We don't get to put our money in Goldman Sachs. Not that we'd want to, but if we did, we couldn't. And the Financial Times here, starting off by saying for almost 150 years, Goldman Sachs has been the go-to bank for the rich and powerful, but now the Wall Street titan is opening up to the masses, the unwashed masses, perhaps. On Main Street by offering online savings accounts for as little as $1 on deposit. So this bank clearly so bankrupt that they are desperate to steal as many people's money as possible, and so they're now opening their doors to everybody. To anybody that invests in this bank is crazy.
Well, same thing going on with Deutsche Bank as well, Mike.
Absolutely,
I think so.
Yes.
What we've got here are the banks which political charity Common Purpose praised in Julia Middleton's book Beyond Authority. She's got glowing reports of all the banks. Lehman Brothers, apparently one of the best banks and a role model for leadership for young people. Deutsche Bank in the background, Goldman Sachs, all of these wonderful banks praised by Common Purpose.
The key point here is that why would they want depositors' money like this? Well, of course, they don't lend depositors' money whenever people go in for a loan. They are not lent depositors' money. That money might be used for proprietary trading on the markets, or it might be used for some future bail-in, perhaps.
Indeed. Well, it's getting interesting. We'll just give you a little reminder because many people say to us, has Common Purpose gone away? The answer to that is absolutely not. Having been caught out in UK, they've sucked in huge amounts of money to now start improving the lives of people overseas. And we just wanted to remind people they've been involved in Libya, all backed by European Union money. Presumably, the European Union hasn't accounted for that money. And we got a heads up the last couple of days that they're now into Turkey. So any state, they're in there helping set up the correct means of government via cultural intelligence.
Indeed, but they are in Libya, and Libya becoming the focus. David Cameron mentioned Libya while Obama was here. We'll talk about that in a second. But it was really Philip Hammond who gave an interview to The Telegraph talking about Libya, the new focus of the British Foreign Office. And this report here saying that British soldiers could be sent to fight Islamic State terrorists in Libya, apparently.
So they're going to be fighting the Russians, they're going to be fighting Islamic State?
Yes, well, what Hammond said was it would make sense it wouldn't make sense to rule anything out because you never know how things are going to evolve. But if there were any question of a British combat role in any form, ground, sea or air, that would go to the House of Commons. Well, this is a bit different to what they were saying last week, isn't it?
Well, it was saying the exact opposite, which shows that the decision was purely that of David Cameron and Mr. Fallon, and they would make the decisions on Britain's troops going overseas.
So they seem to be backsliding from that a little bit. But in the meantime, what they're saying here is that Libya is being turned into a bolt hole for Islamic State, who are running to Libya from Syria and Iraq. Now, it wasn't just Hammond talking, because Michael Fallon weighed in on this. He said that the appalling attacks in Paris and Brussels underline the need for robust action to tackle the links between illegal migration, terrorism and arms smuggling that threaten our security. But it's the British government that's doing all that.
Well, with a bit of help from the CIA and the Americans. Credit where it's due. Yeah,
well, indeed. But it's all very strange because Libya is becoming this bolt hole. And yet only a couple of weeks ago, The Independent was reporting that ISIS backup plan to retreat to Libya is falling apart. So this is all a bit strange. I can't work it out at all. And this was a report from the Combating Terrorism Centre. It was published on the 17th of March. And it said that ISIS had suffered setbacks in Libya and that it was struggling to expand there. It was basically saying that they only had one city that they were in control of, and that was Sirte, which is a coastal city. And they said that when the Islamic State had tried to expand beyond Sirte to the east and to the west, it had run into towns that are controlled by other militias that rebuffed them. So they just weren't making any progress. So I can't work out what kind of drugs our government seem to be on.
Well, I think what it's to do with, Mike, is that basically this is ISIS. So presumably this is the bad terrorists who are going into Libya. Meanwhile, Daesh, because everything else is Daesh now. Daesh being the good terrorists. Do you think it's that or not?
Could be that, or it could be that Michael Fallon and Philip Hammond are just upset that Libya isn't accepting the terrorist refugees from Syria and
as hoped.
As hoped, yeah.
Indeed,
exactly.
Yeah. Well, Common Purpose, of course, is going to help Libya rebuild its public infrastructure. So that'll be interesting to watch.
Indeed. Now, of course, Obama was here on Friday. He went off to Europe over the weekend, well, I saw this being tweeted out today and just thought I should comment on it because it is related. Robert Kimball here saying TTIP will be passed at the EU by majority vote. The UK will have no veto. We must leave to avoid being subjected to its pernicious clauses. And of course, that is a fair point. We must leave, but that doesn't guarantee that we will avoid being subjected to its pernicious clauses. Because, as I've mentioned on a number of occasions now, TTIP is absolutely at the heart of British government trade policy, and I believe we're going to get it, whether we're in or out of Europe. We've got to be out in order to have a chance of fighting it, but it's certainly going to be pushed by our government no matter which way we go. And David Cameron pretty much made that comment when he was giving his speech after the meeting with Obama. He said, well, first of all, he said that our relationship with the United States is about two nations, kindred spirits who share the same values and so often the same approaches to the many issues that we face.
Well, I don't think I share any values with David Cameron or Barry Obama.
No, Barry Sturt, yeah, indeed. But so this is what he said. So Barack and I remain among the most determined to achieve our vision of a US-EU trade deal. His vision, it's not my vision, it's not your vision, it's his vision. And we're working hard to push this forward because it would add billions to our economies and set the standards for the rest of the world to follow. Yeah. So what we're talking about here is global governance. We're talking about a new level, a new layer of governance infrastructure And we'll be talking a little bit more about this later on.
So these are the world leaders, and we just follow what they say because
absolutely
they're leading.
Absolutely. And then Barry went off to Germany, and he had this to say. Angela and I agree that the United States and the European Union need to keep moving forward with the transatlantic trade and investment partnership negotiations. I don't anticipate that we'll be able to have completed ratification of a deal by the end of the year, but I do anticipate we can have completed the agreement. So this is front and center of everything that's going on at the moment. It is absolutely a core part of the so-called renegotiated settlement with the European Union. If we vote to stay in, we are voting for TTIP. Cameron is pushing this, and I don't see any mainstream political parties organising against it.
Well, a lot of people are still unaware. Over the weekend, Mike, I had an interesting discussion with some dog walkers who said they were undecided as to what they should vote. And that started a little discussion on what was what. And I explained that, of course, even if the vote is to leave, then the machinery is all in place to keep us in. And at that point, they got very interested. So it comes back to this business of pumping the information out as to what the government's really got planned, which is stay in.
Absolutely. Now, UKIP, this is the deputy leader of UKIP, Paul Nuttall, who is really raising a flag over the potential for postal voter fraud during the referendum. Well, in fact, it's not just the referendum, of course, it's every election that's coming up here. And we've had postal vote fraud identified in Peterborough, Burnley, Blackburn, Birmingham, other places as well. He's saying that this is just the tip of the iceberg. He said, I felt I had to write this paper following what I witnessed at the Oldham West and Royton by-election, where boxes containing postal votes were almost unanimously in support of one particular party. I knew then that something was rotten in our system. I believe postal voting needs to return to its origins, allowing those who are genuinely infirm and housebound, or perhaps abroad serving in the armed forces, to have their say at the ballot box. What we have at the moment, thanks to the Labour Party, for whom it serves best, is a system where anyone that can demand to be allowed a postal vote rather than visit a polling station. Well, his points are valid here, but I think it doesn't go quite far enough. We need to start asking questions about who is running the voting system in this country, who is running our elections. We need to look at some of the companies involved, some of the companies that this has all been outsourced to, like IDOX, that's spelled IDOX, for example. And we need to ask some pretty serious questions about how a private corporation that's operating for profit can be operating the electoral register on one hand, running the postal votes on the other. They know who appears at the ballot box. The possibilities for fraud here are huge.
And of course, the EU referendum committee at the moment doesn't want to answer the penetrating questions which Mr. David Barnes has been putting. Barmby has been putting forward, and vested interest, because of course many of the people of that committee have got EU interests anyway, so no independence there from the outset. If you haven't seen the video interview of Mr. Dave Barmby, where he's talking about how the 1975 EEC vote was rigged, please watch it, because exactly the same thing's taking place in 2016. It's just we've got the extra sophistication of the propaganda over the internet to go with it. Well, talking of propaganda, we need to talk about control of the press, and the three in the bedsome, celebrity three in the threesome, is much more important than many of the papers are making out. So we thought we'd take you through part of this. But the Telegraph here saying that the Supreme Court is now considering this case. What is this about? This is about celebrities romping three in a bed. But here in England, we're not allowed to know the name of those celebrities. You can if you're in Scotland or the rest of the world. But somebody has decided that if you're here in England, we're presumably too stupid to need to know, really, Mike, I think is what it comes to. Well, what sort of people are deciding this? Well, Lord Neuberger and other judges have now gone into secret debate behind closed doors. They say they're going to take some time to reach a decision on this case, and we'll take you through it in a bit more detail in just a minute. But this is the position at the moment. The world knows who this threesome is, but if you live in England, you're not allowed to know, and you're not allowed to speak about it. Well, it gets interesting because if you go and have a look at Guido Fawkes' website, we'd encourage everybody to go and have a look. This is very, very dangerous stuff. He's put out a warning, which has come from the press regulator IPSO. And this has come about because apparently photographers have been hovering around the residence of David Furnish. And IPSO has said strictly private and confidential, not for publication. The Independent Press Standards Organisation has today been contacted by representatives of David Furnish. Mr. Furnish says he's concerned by the conduct of photographers outside his home. He's asked IPSO to pass on his request that photographers desist from attempts to follow, pursue or photograph him. And IPSO says we're happy to pass on this request and note the terms of Clause 2, privacy, Clause 3, harassment, and Clause 6, children, of the Editor's Code of Practice. So here we've now got IPSO in its true colours, which is, of course, to protect the wealthy, rich and famous VIPs. Meanwhile, the rest of us just too silly to be allowed to know what's going on. Well, where did this state of affairs come from? And of course, we need to go back to Common Purpose, because it was Common Purpose that via the Media Standards Trust hacked off, ultimately produced the Leveson inquiry, where Lord Leveson made a very powerful attempt to get control of Britain's press and media. Luckily, due to the exposure mainly by the Daily Mail, that didn't happen. So this is where we are. The Sun on Sunday wanted to publish the three in a bed romp, but the man argued the right to privacy and took legal action. That went to the High Court. The High Court refused to impose an injunction. The man appealed, and Lord Justice Jackson and Lady Justice King subsequently imposed an injunction. And remember, that was for the English. The rest of the world were quite happy to know who it was. Senior judges granted the injunction on the grounds that the privacy of PJS and his partner YMA was more important under human rights law than the public's right to know. We simply don't count, Mike, in this little discussion. So the Sun appeals for the injunction to be lifted. The man opposed that. And then we go to the Court of Appeal. Lord Justice Jackson, Lady Justice King and Lord Justice Smith rule for the Sun and for the injunction to be set aside. And now it's gone to the Supreme Court to try and reverse the decision by the Court of Appeal. So if you take the magic circle to its limit, everybody knows the identity, but we've now got unaccountable judges meeting in secret, because that's where you have a magic circle. Meanwhile, the world knows we don't. So you can see where this is going, which is thanks to Lord Leveson in principle and common purpose. There's can be a complete blanket shutdown on items in the media.
Well, it gets better, because here we go. Sapient. This is a word that everybody should know from now on. This is the autonomous security system that reduces operator workload. And it stands for Sensing for Asset Protection and Integrated Electronic Network Technology. There you go, that's Sapient. It's an autonomous sensor system designed to reduce the workload of perimeter protection and security personnel. And it says here, most security systems such as CCTV cameras simply collect data and feed it to an operator who assesses the situation and directs the system accordingly. Monitoring and interpreting lots of data can place a high cognitive burden on the operator. In the Sapient system, individual sensors may make low-level decisions autonomously, such as which direction to look, or whether to zoom in order to fulfill a higher level objective. These higher level objectives are managed by the decision-making process which controls the overall system and makes some of the decisions normally made by the operators. This reduces the operator's need to constantly monitor the output of sensors. So let's just have a little look at the promotional video for this, and you will very quickly get an idea of what it's all about. Okay, so what is this? This is total information awareness. Now, I'm sure many will remember that where that name came from. It came from Admiral John Poindexter's Information Awareness Office. That's the logo for it on the left. And following the backlash over that, it was scrapped in inverted commas. And in fact, instead of being an overt program, it became a covert program, and it was morphed into the NSA snooping programs, which Edward Snowden later exposed. And the other place that total information awareness was promoted very heavily was in the BBC series The Last Enemy, and the cover for the DVDs on the right-hand side there. Their version of total information awareness is exactly what Sapient is. It's pretty much exactly what it is. So were the authors psychic, do we think? Possibly. Let's just remind ourselves who is funding this project. First of all, we've got the Defence Science and Technology Laboratory, and we've also got Innovate UK, who are apparently working with industry partners to exploit these technologies further for military and civilian security applications. So there you go. Brian, what do you make of that?
Well, unbelievably dangerous. Of course, they say it's autonomous, but at the end of the day, you've got people who have access to this data, and it's those people that we should be very wary of. I mean, we've got a government involved in fraud, corruption, child abuse, arming terrorists overseas, creating unlawful wars. That's the calibre of the British government, at least. and they are the people who are going to have access to this. So the surveillance is one thing, but ultimately it doesn't matter what the surveillance system is, the information is going to go to an individual. And who's top of the surveillance system? David Cameron, who says, trust me, I am your king and I am going to be your future leader.
Yes.
It's hard to know what to say. And of course, you've got the mixture of kinetic there. You've got defence industry mixed in with universities and local authorities. Unbelievably dangerous. And people are walking into this. But it was Russia Today last week that had the article warning that Britain was sleepwalking into a dictatorship. And Russia Today, you're absolutely right.
Okay.
Well, we better bring in the BBC because propaganda is, of course, part of a dictatorship. And a couple of weeks ago, we pointed out that the BBC was working to help destabilise Iran. And what was going on is that they were promoting the fact that some Iranian women and visitors to the country were risking arrest by going out in public without the religious head covering, the hijab. And they put a great deal of information on the BBC, so they were promoting it. But of course, if women were to do this on the ground, they risk arrest, they risk beatings. So dangerous stuff. And we took the BBC to task. And note they're also promoting these applications. Of course, it's all Russia. In this little article, Mike, it was all those nasty Russians had developed the application, and you've just described a system leaving this in the Stone Age, which is coming into Britain, developed in Britain. But this is the meat of it. The BBC was encouraging Iranian and Western women to break the law and risk imprisonment, physical assault, knowing the risks of the photo on social media. Well, the lady in the BBC I emailed at the time sort of said, well, no, they weren't doing that at all. So, okay, maybe. But where have they gone now? Well, they're at it again, and they're coming in at a different angle because now the BBC is promoting that Iranians should be sidestepping the morality police. And notice who has posted this. This is BBC Monitoring, by BBC Monitoring the world through its media. Or does that say BBC monitoring the world through its media?
I think that's closer to it.
I think that's exactly what it is. And here we are. So they're saying that basically there's now an application which allows people to sidestep the religious patrols, which are making sure people are abiding by the rules. Now, Iran is a sovereign state. We might not like the system of government in Iran, but what is important here is the BBC is dangerously interfering. And of course, it's picked up again by BBC Trending, where they give it even more promotion. And at the end, it says, if the app lives up to the claims made for it, Gurshad will be a lifesaver for the growing numbers of young Iranians who are pushing the boundaries of what is allowed and finding themselves on the wrong side of what an Irshad agency is acceptable. Well, this isn't going to be a lifesaver, Mike. This is going to put young people into risk of arrest, beatings, or worse. And the BBC clearly knows exactly what it's doing. Well, this is the man who's put the article together. So an Iranian now working for the BBC, and this is dangerous, subversive material coming straight out of the BBC, funded 3.65 billion taxpayers' money. And we just remind you that Lady Marina pointed out to us a while ago, of course, that if you go on YouTube, there's an excellent documentary showing the role of the BBC in the coup back in 1953. So BBC, exceptionally dangerous. And of course, the UK column has taken the lead on exposing BBC media action. Well, we decided to use the UK column pen. So here is the typed email. First of all, I wrote it with one of our excellent pens. Dear Emma, once is accidental but twice not. Following BBC encouraging Iranian women to break the law over hijabs, the BBC is now encouraging Iranians to use an app to outsmart the morality police. dangerous interference in a sovereign nation which places people at grave risk. BBC staff should be ashamed that they're facilitating highly dangerous BBC political interference in Iran. So if you agree with our statement, I hope that other people will pick up on what the BBC is up to. Of course, the BBC doesn't want us to believe that's what they're doing, and we've got something here which is what they're really concerned about. And apparently in 2020, they're going to meet a target which says that 1 in 6 BBC stars is going to be gay or lesbian or disabled or bisexual or transgender or something in between. So this is what's important for the BBC. And then it had these two individuals in a picture. I know who one is, I don't know who the other one is, and I don't care. But apparently it said that they indicate that it's a male-dominated BBC. Well, I would challenge that. And of course, the BBC doesn't want to promote this. So here we've got a BBC executive. He worked for 12 years in the BBC, leaves, and then has just been picked up with 33,000 images of child pornography, some of them in the worst ever category. But of course, there's no paedophiles in the BBC, nothing to see. Savile was all just a little misunderstanding, apparently, Mike.
Apparently. But we need to get more children in to the country. This story runs on and on and on. And so far, nobody has given an answer to the very simple question, how are these children going to be looked after when they come to this country? So this is a Lord's Amendment, which MPs are going to vote on today, which they're hoping will defeat the government, because the government is pretending that it doesn't want to have these children come into the country. So opposition MPs, The Guardian saying, hoping to inflict an embarrassing defeat on the government on Monday over its refusal to extend help to unaccompanied child refugees from Syria and other war-torn countries. And who's pushing this? Save the Children. But it's mainly Tim Farron, the Liberal Democrat leader, who's been pushing this for so many months now. And he's saying the vote on Monday is a test of Britain's humanity. MPs must stand up for the values and traditions that make Britain great. Well, Tim Farron has refused to answer this simple question. Will he know where any child that comes into this country this year is in 10 years' time? He doesn't want to answer that. So he's saying that this is a test of Britain's humanity. I want to make this a test of Tim Farron's humanity. Is Tim Farron a human being? I don't know. But unless he can answer the simple question of what is going to happen to these children, I don't think he is human. And here is the point. Europol is pointing out that 10,000 children have gone missing from Syria since arriving in Europe. And these children are being grabbed by criminal gangs. They're being taken into sex slavery. They're being put on drugs and goodness knows what else. And so this is why I am saying to Tim Farron and everybody who's pushing this horrible agenda to bring these children to this country, and I say it only on the basis that I don't believe that this country is equipped to look after them. I appreciate that these children need to be looked after, but this country is the last place they need to be.
Well, the situation at the moment, Mike, is that children from British families are not safe in this country, but if you come to the United Kingdom on holiday with young children, your children are also not safe from the British government. And we're going to thank Alex Thompson for this picture, which he took in Madrid. He saw an advert down at the bottom. It's got British Council. And apparently the meat of this advert is that your economy is sort of kaput. It's in trouble. But give us your child and we're going to educate them and they might just get a job. So here's the British government targeting children overseas through the British Council. And of course, the British Council was happy to use Sally Dicketts, the principal from Oxford and Cherwell Valley College, to represent excellence in education. You couldn't make this stuff up, Mike, as we always say.
Cities. Here we go. It continues, picking up the pace of devolution. This is by a guy called Ben Harrison. And he says the National Audit Office has published a new report calling for greater clarity and accountability in the government's devolution agenda in order to, in its own words, ensure that devolution deals, quote, stimulate and rebalance economic growth more effectively and reform public services so they're better designed for local users. He goes on to say this has had serious consequences for the leadership of London, which still boasts far fewer devolved powers than other global capitals, as well as those of major regional cities like Manchester, Birmingham and others. The exception here has been Greater Manchester, which was the only combined authority to quickly appoint an interim Metro Mayor in mid-2015 with a brief to move the devolution programme forward and raise the profile of the new arrangements with the public. In hindsight, this step should have been a precondition of publicly announcing devolution agreements for all city regions. And he's using that term, city regions. So who is Ben Harrison? Well, he's the Director of Communications and Development for the Centre for Cities think tank, which of course is an independent, impartial, non-partisan, of course, as you can imagine. So what is the key point here is what is the agenda here, aside from the fact that devolution is all about breaking up the country, and we actually believe that the Westminster government will disappear eventually from that. Well, this gives more of a clue. This is from Quartz. Megacities, not nations, are the world's dominant, enduring social structures. And they say cities are mankind's most enduring and stable mode of social organisation, outlasting all empires and nations over which they've presided. Today, cities have become the world's dominant demographic and economic clusters. Cities thus deserve more nuanced treatment on our maps than simply as homogeneous black dots. In the UK, London accounts for almost half of Britain's GDP, and in America, the Boston, New York, Washington corridor and Greater Los Angeles together combine for about 1/3 of America's GDP. It goes on to say, by 2025, there'll be at least 40 such megacities, and they go on to say then, great and connected cities, Saskia Sassen argues, belong as much to global networks as to the country of their political geography. Recreating the world map according to the 36 megacities, therefore, tells us much more about where the world's people are and money is than conventional maps of 200 separate countries. So this was written by Parag Khanna. And who's that? Well, he's a leading global strategist, world traveler, and best-selling author, apparently. He is a CNN global contributor, and he's a senior research fellow at the Centre on Asia and Globalization. And so the question is, who's pushing all this? Well, on the first page, we can see their network here, and at the bottom is Chatham House. And who else is in here? We've got the Robert Bosch Academy. We've got Asia Centre. We've got the University of Cambridge. We've got the G50. We've got the London School of Economics, and we've got the World Economic Forum. This is the crowd that are pushing this stuff. Harvard Kennedy School, Brookings Institute, of course, and so it goes on. So this is who's pushing this agenda. This is about global governance and what will be the form of global governance in the future. It isn't going to be based on the nation state. It's going to be based on city-states. We've been talking about this for months. And I'll just ask everybody to go and have a look at Rotten to the Core on the UK Column website by Martin Edwards. And in fact, the whole Common Purpose Effect series to get a clue as to what this is about. We're looking at global governance, Agenda 21, and so on.
This is what Common Purpose's cultural intelligence and future leadership is about. This is exactly what they're doing, which is attack and break down the nation states and then promote this globalist agenda. And of course, all those think tanks, Mike, can only exist without the money pouring in to support them. If you want to know where that comes from, well, we're back at those same corrupt banks. But of course, we also might have a look at George Soros and Open Society Foundation, which openly boasts of putting billions of US dollars into these very think tanks. Well, let's follow the theme because we were given this, and I'm just going to say people can read it for themselves. I'll read through, but what sort of organisation would be pushing out a document that looks like this. It says, I grew up in a physical world and I speak English. The next generation is growing up in a digital world and they speak social. And for our listeners today, I'm going to say that the text, well, how would you describe the text, Mike?
I couldn't even, it's hard to say. It's horrible.
It's sort of handwritten, it's in blue, but it's got drips underneath all of these letters. If this was written in red, I think you would imagine that it was blood dripping off the screen. Well, let's have a look at where this comes from, because let's introduce this man, Steve Fairman, who's the Interim Managing Director of NHS Improving Quality. And you'll note that the foreword is written in exactly the same way.
Yeah.
This is not nice stuff. Well, what's it about? Well, if we get into this document, something we'll see straight away is that our aim is to stimulate new and disruptive approaches to transformation and improvement. So this is talking about people working inside the NHS to transform it. We don't know what they're going to transform it into, but they're going to use disruptive approaches.
Yeah.
And we'll make this document available. People need to see it. If you want to know how nasty it is, well, let's take you to the front cover and you can decide for yourselves, because here we are. So NHS improving quality. We've got somebody begging on the street. Keep your coins, I want change. The new era of thinking and practice in change and transformation. So we've got thousands dying of dehydration, starvation, neglect in the NHS. And of course, we know what's causing it. This is disruptive change. And let's bring in the UK column article, the NHS Common Purpose Towards 1 Million Change Agents, because this is what is now going on.
I mean, surely these people should be concentrating on helping people's health.
Health and helping people and making people better doesn't get mentioned in any of these documents, Mike. They go into newspeak, transformational, disruptive change. But I'm going to say, please have a look at this video. I'm just going to show you a still from it. It is stunning in what this man says. So this is the video. And it's Steve Fairman who wrote that report, Interim Managing Director of NHS Improving Quality. And in it, at one point, he says it's how to get the spirit into people to make the change. And we say, which spirit is Mr. Fairman referring to? Because I don't think he's referring to a nice spirit. You really need to watch this little video clip. It's only about 5 minutes long, and perhaps other people can tell me what it is that's, I'm going to say, emerging from this man. It's really nasty. It's very powerful, and that document is just obscene. No other word for it. Well, where does this stuff all come from? Look no further than NHS Change Day, Leaders Everywhere, the story of change. And if you want more information, I've given you an email address. But let's have a little look at what they talk about here in this document. They're exploring what can be learned from NHS change. Here's common purpose. They're working to achieve common purpose in the NHS. If you have a look at the references, what do we find? Well, we find Towards 1 Million Change Agents, which is the UK column article. Well, it was our analysis on that document, Towards 1 Million Change Agents. And to reinforce your point, Mike, if we have a look at the people, we've got Kate Hilton, a director at Rethink Health, and she's linked through to other organisations, including Harvard University. Who is this woman? What qualifications has she got to disrupt the British NHS? She hasn't got any qualifications, certainly in helping people or treating the sick. And her colleague here, Chris Lawrence Petroni, the man I've given you the email address for, well, he's linked to Birmingham University, psychologist, but of course he's working with American companies in health in the States. So no doubt profit there. And who are they linked through to? Well, here's Rethink Health. Do go and have a look at this website and have a look at the people concerned and ask the same question. Who are these people? None of them are British. Why are they involved in the NHS? And there's a list of, as they say, collaborators. So this is exactly the same stuff, Mike. We've got a huge list of people and what are they up to? And if you follow Rethink through, it'll take you to the Dartmouth Institute. And what are they interested in? Substance abuse disorder, Ebola, global warfare, the role of entrepreneurs. This is all American. So the minimum is this is Obamacare with massive corporate profits on the back of it. Nasty stuff. And we're going to ask this question: who are these people and why are they transforming the NHS with disruptive change? Where does it leave? Well, we couldn't have put it more simply than this. This is going back a few months ago, but the Daily Mail here, where a top doctor warned that the NHS was killing off 130,000 elderly patients every year. And I'm going to say that the UK column is now receiving information from very experienced NHS professionals who are saying these statistics are correct. Finally, another video for you to have a look at, and this is all the same thing. This is The Future, as narrated by Helen Bevan, the Chief Transformation Officer of the NHS. So
Common purpose, of course.
Common purpose, nothing about treating sick people who need care and compassion. Where do we go from here, Mike? It's astonishing the speed at the information that's pouring in. Many people are seeing that this has speeded up. And of course, you get a sense of panic now in David Cameron's government that people are actually seeing through the spin and the propaganda, this new agenda working under the surface.
Well, the key point is the information is there in front of us. It's what are people going to do with it? That is the question. And if anybody's watching this and intends to switch this news off and then go back to sleep, that wouldn't be the best thing to do.
No. What is needed is to get in the faces of these people, ask questions, talk to other people, expose it, get writing those emails, letters and tweeting. It's the exposure which does the damage. And even simply asking questions, a very safe means of tackling these people, has a huge effect. So don't let Mr. Tim Farron, for example, sit there without being challenged on the children. Please get writing those letters, make the phone calls, make the emails.
If you're in his constituency, go and see him and ask the question face to face.
Preferably in front of other people.
Yeah. Before we go, no Ian Crane tonight. Ian will be back next Monday, I believe. And just to say that immediately after this program, I'm playing out a radio program that I was part of last week from Alternate Current Radio, which is the ACR, is the radio network that Patrick Henningsen is part of, and Patrick was on the program as well. So that'll be out straight after this news.
Excellent. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back same time tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.